Welcome back. This is By the Book, and we're your married relationship coaches. I'm Seth.
I'm Sim.
And today we're talking about Married at First Sight, Season 17, Episode 5, Lauren and Orion. Okay, so there's a lot to unpack here, I think. Of course, we're going to get to the heated conversation between the two of them, but kind of leading up to that moment, I want to talk about what I think is going on, maybe some theories that I have, and see what you guys think about it. I think at first what we were seeing in this episode was positive exchanges between the two of them. Their attempts at having chemistry with one another, although I don't really buy it. My husband buys it more than I do. But, you know, I'm not sold on the chemistry being there between the two of them. I think, like I said before, that Lauren is very committed to the process. I haven't talked a lot about whether or not I think that's the same page that Orion is on, but it very well might be. I'm not 100% convinced that he's that into her either, even though he says the right things. You know, have you seen my wife? Blah, blah, blah. And I haven't actually heard her say that she was attracted to him. So I just don't think so.
Well, what did we see this week? We saw, before the issues, we saw them chilling. What was it, in the hot tub or whatever? In some water. Yeah, we saw them chilling. We saw them chilling in the water. A lot of touching, a lot of feeling, a lot of kissing, some groping. There was a lot of things. There was some groping. I saw some groping going on, and so there was some things going on that it seemed like physically they were kind of digging each other to me until they weren't.
I don't know. I think they're pretty open. Like, I don't want to put this on their sexuality being fluid, but that could be part of it too, where there's some flexibility in what you will tolerate to some extent physically or in terms of physical attractiveness. I don't know, but I'm not convinced. I feel like they are sold on the process and not necessarily one another.
That's fair enough.
So
I can see where you can reach that conclusion.
Yeah. I mean, and now it's something that wouldn't be so bad if we didn't come to the point that we got to toward the end is, the sharing of different things within one another's culture, kind of, cutely educating one another when she's talking about laying her edges and he's never heard anything like that before, but it's cute. She's explaining it to him. He's very interested or seemingly interested in it, and that's the trajectory that I would have liked to see them continue to go in, where it's kind of like an exchange of, hey, this is what the type of thing that I do. This is how it is for me, and this is something you haven't been exposed to. And that could go both ways. So, that part I was liking. What came next is what I think is kind of the catalyst for the way that this relationship is probably breaking down. And we heard Lauren talk about money with him, like what the gender role and then kind of the gender dynamic will be in the relationship. And I think that that's a big point for men and women alike, not just on this show, but just in general. Sorry, guys, had to take a baby break. Anyway, we were talking about Lauren and her bringing up the money situation with Orion. Even going so far as to say, like, that's an awkward conversation or a tough conversation to bring up with men. And I think that's true. And that's something we could probably even do a sidebar on. But like I said in earlier reviews that we did of them, I feel like she's in a different situation from him. Part of it may just be because of her career path. Part of it may be because of their age difference. Part of it may be because of her independence and potentially his lack thereof, coming from the type of woman-led environment that he was in. I don't know. Maybe all three play a role. But I feel like what she was saying, the conversation she was having with him in terms of him being the provider, potentially being an 80-20 split and things like that for finances is tough for him to envision.
Yeah.
And I wonder if, along with what may have already been a little bit of a challenge with attraction from him to her, if that also kind of intimidated him and potentially pushed him a little bit farther away, making him kind of therefore seek an out.
I do kind of feel you, but really didn't see the pull away when they had their discussion. Did he feel probably uncomfortable? Yes. I will grant you that, especially with him, like you said, saying the 80-20, you know.
But see, now, according to what he said, or what it kind of came out during the course of that conversation, they must have had a conversation off camera that we didn't see, where he brought up 80-20 as being a split. But it was almost like a fantasy, or like, you know, theoretically, this is what I would like.
Yeah.
But the reality of that is probably hard to envision.
Yeah, I mean, well, my thing is that they have such a deep conversation as far as knowing each other's expenses, bills, and all of this
Probably not.
for every month. So how can you just blanketly say, I can take on 80%?
Right.
80% of what? You don't know
that's
what it
the
is.
thing. He wasn't saying that. He was saying it, I think, from the way I took that conversation, that he was saying it more in theory, like that's where he would want to be. So when they then had this conversation, he was saying, so what will it be, 60-40 or, you know, 70-30? And she's like, well, I like what you said about 80-20.
Of course you. I bet you did.
Yeah, I mean, but you come into these situations with people who you don't know what to expect. So all you do have is like your ideals and stuff. Like, I would like for it to be like this. He would like for it to be like that. She would like for it to be like that. But can it be like that? No, probably not. And I feel like just a lot of times, generally speaking, not just with Married at First Sight, just men in general, women in general, when a man is encountered with a situation where he feels like he can't meet what he wants to be able to do or what is expected of him, it is a challenge. It is intimidating.
It is.
And I think it can be off-putting in that relationship. And so I'm thinking that may be some of what Orion was feeling, whether or not he voiced it or demonstrated it in that moment. I feel like he internalized it, and then it's something that he will act on going forward.
All of the above. Yeah, I think he felt very uncomfortable with that, especially, again, with the ratio that he threw out or whatever.
Yeah.
Without knowing what this 80% was going to entail.
Yeah. I mean, he's, right, like he's an electrician. Is that what he is? He's a hands-on guy. He does some sort of
I forgot what
physical, blue-collar type work, and I know that can be a very well-paid position. So I don't know. I just don't know. I just don't get the sense that he's especially well paid when he has the conversations with her. It makes it seem like he's out-earned by her, even though they haven't said so. I don't know. If you guys heard more than what I know, please, drop that in the comments below. But that's just the vibe that I guess between the two of them.
Yeah, that's the vibe I get as well. She seemed pretty established. Yeah, so, well, as they say, finances is one of the big sticky points for relationships.
It is. It definitely can be.
They've only known each other for a day.
Exactly.
Yeah, they talk about it, but don't make those hard line, this is what we're doing. You don't know, you don't have all the details yet. So, talk about it, work it out together.
Yeah, I think just throwing those numbers out makes it a challenge, not because you said that's what you're going to do, but even just having that in the back of either of their minds.
Yeah.
And then going forward, if that's not something that's attainable, then it's like, oh, he was supposed to be paying 80%, you know, and you feel a type of way. Mm-hmm. So anyway, I mean, they're not even nearly there. And here we run into this other huge problem, which is the thing that everybody wants to talk about. He be making me want to. I'm so heated conversation. So this was a cringe-worthy conversation. Honestly, I definitely found myself like grimacing listening to it. Lauren came out. I mean, I think it was upon Orion's question about what do you want to know about me before we leave the honeymoon? Her response to that, asking him had he ever used the N-word, was shocking to me in and of itself. I just didn't know she would do it. I mean, I guess when you are in an interracial relationship, those are the types of things that you kind of want to know. You want to know, like, what might happen that could offend me or my family, or where might we run into some awkwardness or the extreme, differences. So I understand why she asked it. It still took me aback hearing her ask that.
Yeah, I wasn't ready for that. It just took me so completely off guard. And it was just, I don't know, how do you just change gears? That's not the conversation that was on the table.
It wasn't just what I was expecting.
When
he asked that question to her, what do you want to know about me? I wasn't expecting her to bring up a racial slur.
Yeah. And I agree with you. You do kind of want to know what the parameters are. You want to know what's appropriate or what's inappropriate. And so I do understand. Maybe you should ease into that one a little bit better.
But, I mean, it was going well. Because I feel like Lauren, again, maybe it's because of the age gap, but I feel like she has the ability to handle things in a pretty mature fashion. Yeah. So he said he doesn't use the N-word. She followed up asking him, have you ever? He said yes. He kind of explained, his ignorance at the time and in his youth, et cetera, et cetera.
The songs.
She's trying to relate to him, saying, yeah, definitely, I get it. I've said things that were, insensitive before, not knowing. And he brings up the terminology redskin. Forgive us, we're just quoting. This is not something that we would ever use unless it was about the former football team. Yeah. So I did not know what it meant. He educated me during this episode. So it was just a moment that went so bad. And I think perhaps unnecessarily so. But let's talk about that. So I want to hear you guys' thoughts on how that went, if you felt like he handled it appropriately or inappropriately. Or it's very difficult to say, I think, from a person sitting not in the other person's position, how you should take something and how you should respond to that. But I think an important thing that was brought up during the after party was kind of the grace that was given to him or extended to him, and the grace that he did not extend to her in that situation.
That was a very good point.
So just to finish off what happened, actually, in case you didn't see it or watch very closely, he asked her, had she ever used that term, essentially redskin? And she said no. She was like, I don't even know what that means. As she's looking up at him, she starts to laugh, and she was like, oh, yes, I do. I'm looking at your face. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, ma'am, what are you saying? Mm-hmm. I wanted to stuff those words back in her mouth so bad. But it was said. You can't put the toothpaste back in the tube. It was said. She kind of laughed. She had this like horrified expression on her face as she was laughing, like, oh my gosh, I just offended him. And, his response to that was not positive. He's like, that was rough. Mm-hmm. And I think that's fair. My response to his response in that particular part of that conversation was, that's fair. Like, that didn't go over well. Mm-hmm. So she apologized. She tried to explain. I don't think that she offered a poor explanation. It was one of those awkward moments where you say something unfortunate. I have done it, not necessarily in a racial sense, but I've certainly done it in a lot of different situations. I'm good for putting my foot in my mouth. So I mean, that's why maybe I'm so sensitive to it, is because I feel like I need a lot of grace for some things that I say, because sometimes we just talk too much, say the wrong things, and you don't mean anything by it.
Yeah, and that's kind of like where I wanted to go with it a little bit.
Okay.
To me, it seems as though we as a culture and as a society, my personal opinion, y'all, seems like we just a little too sensitive. And I'm not saying that she was right, because I don't think she was. And
Right.
at that particular point, it was a bit offensive, and she tried to laugh it off a little bit. I get it. But however, it just seems as though we try so hard not to offend people. That's impossible. Eventually, people are going to be offended, whether you try, you don't try, whether if it's intentional or unintentional. And so we tiptoe around certain things and we still offend people, you know? And so...
And then it almost comes off worse when you have the reaction like, oh, I offended you, didn't I?
Yeah.
It's almost worse than if you never even acknowledged it seems.
Exactly.
The same thing happened with Cameron, and it happened with her again. Like, immediately upon saying the offensive thing, it was like a horrible, moment. And it just made it so much worse.
Yeah.
So, interesting to me, though, was once he really was holding her feet to the fire, so to speak, on this issue, not kind of letting her, what did he say, minimize it. She gave him some pushback and saying, look, I'm trying to figure out what can be joked about, what can't be joked about, et cetera, et cetera. And I don't think she was trying to joke about that. I think she was looking at his face and seeing that he has sunburn. But it was just a very unfortunate thing to say in that moment, during that conversation.
Yeah.
It was just awful.
Yeah.
So, in defending herself, I think, she brought up the difference in the way that in the way that Orion treated Cameron when he said what he said on the bus versus what she said to him. And I just wanted to kick that over to you and to our viewers to see, is there a difference? Do you think this was because he was dealing with a white male versus a black woman? That his reaction was to be heated? Or do you think that these are two totally different things and it was appropriate, the difference in how he responded?
I think it was different because this is now his wife that he's trying to learn, but yet also develop feelings for. And like I said before this incident, they were very touchy-feely, and very close to one another in each other's physical space. And so it's put this way. Someone who's closer to you can hurt you more than someone who's not closer to you. He has desires to be close to her. He's trying to be close to her. And so she says this to him. It hurts his feelings. It's going to hurt his feelings more than whatever Cameron is going to say, because this is now his wife and he's going through the process of trying to develop a relationship with her. He ain't trying to develop no relationship with Cameron, okay?
I mean,
at least I hope he ain't.
Theoretically that works for me. In real life. It doesn't, because she's just as new to him as Cameron is to him. And I personally, I think you're right, but I personally can't put myself in that spot.
He is and was more open to Lauren than he was to Cameron. So it gives him gives her a greater opportunity to offend him.
Well, he could
than Cameron.
Do you think he felt that and could have articulated that in that moment? Because his explanation was, reservation is a lot different from redskin, which that I can understand a little bit better than where they are in their relationship. By comparison, just because she is so new. Like, it's very easy to shut down on somebody that's brand new to you because, 3 days ago we didn't know each other, so who cares? But a reservation is a lot different than Redskin.
It definitely is.
The thing is that she did not call him that is right? And I do commend her for handling the situation the way that she did as best she could, even though it really didn't fix anything for him in that moment or as between them in that moment. But I felt like she could have gotten extremely defensive. And you saw her, I almost could feel her through the television just relinquish what she wanted to push back with. Like, she was getting ready to say something, and she just was like, okay. Like, that's true. You're right. She really did back down on what could have become, you talking about heated. Yeah. That could have been a very heated conversation. And I certainly, at her age, I don't know how old she is, but it's younger than me. I don't think I would have handled it as well as she would have because I would have been annoyed rather than being sensitive to him. I would have been annoyed that I felt like my words and my intentions were being twisted and manipulated. And I think I would have, like I said, you talk about heated. I think my response would have been awful and we would have gotten divorced before we left the honeymoon.
Wow. Okay.
So,
yeah. She's being honest. Yeah.
I'm so honest.
Yeah, she is. She did back down. But as we discussed last week, she's more of a de-escalator. And I think she kind of analyzed the situation that this is not a good time. We can revisit this.
And she was wrong.
Yeah.
So instead of taking that away from him, and turning it into what it could have turned into if he was dealing with me, then she did the right thing. She did an appropriate thing. And now what I will be interested to see is if he prolongs that, will she continue to fall on her sword, or will she be like, all right, now enough is enough, because that's not what was going on. And I don't feel like, I feel like that moment in this whole thing with them probably set the tone for their whole relationship. Of course, we're only on episode 5, but a lot of times, and my husband and I try to read between the lines from what we see on the after party. And his position, if you watched the after party, was he wouldn't have done anything differently. And that said to me...
That was his first position.
Right, but that said to me volumes about where their relationship went from that point forward. Also, his conversation with Emily, I think it was. Is that her name? Okay. She was standing up for Lauren.
Yeah.
And she was kind of, knocking him for not giving her grace. And I don't feel like she would have taken that much of a stance in that position if he had kind of mellowed out during the course of the show and the marriage. So, but we'll see. I mean, I could be wrong. I read into that deeply. And I feel like their relationship probably was doomed from that moment forward, if not before.
It does appear that way for right now. And just real quick, yes. Our spouses are going to make mistakes. We're going to make mistakes. Well, none of us are perfect, and so when we make mistakes, we have to, or when someone offends, especially in a marriage, we have to be ready to give that person grace. We have to, because guess what? When we mess up, we're going to need that grace in return. Yeah.
And I don't think he's seeing that. But he's young. He may be a little bit immature and experienced in relationships. So
yeah, but I like how he said previously, in the scene beforehand, when they were talking and they were on cloud 9 together. Oh, that's all we have to do is talk about it. You and I, we'll work it out together.
Yeah, but the proof is in the pudding.
Yeah.
Right? That didn't happen.
Yeah, no, it did not. Yeah.
Or at least it hasn't happened yet. Maybe there's a huge turnaround next episode. We'll see.
We hope.
But anyway, guys, let us know your thoughts. Drop your comments below. Like, share, and subscribe. Let us know what you think about Orion and Lauren and that unfortunate conversation they had. Yeah. So anyway, that's all we got for them. You guys, we'll talk to you soon.
Bye.